Once the Big 12 added the four corner schools from the Pac 12, we all thought expansion was over for now for the Big 12 conference. Maybe that's not the case. And could they add the remaining four teams from the Pac 12 and throw them a lifeboat? And would that be a good move for the conference? Belly yourself up to the bar, and we're going to talk about it right after this word from our sponsor. Ladies and gentlemen, this episode is brought to you by Dutch Miller Automotive, where friends and family pricing means you get the best deal right up front on any new or pre-loved vehicle in stock every time. With brands like Chevrolet, Chrysler, Dodge, Jeep, Ram, Kia, Hyundai, Ford, GMC, Buick, and Subaru, the Dutch Miller Automotive family is always growing and ready to put you in the car or truck you've been searching for. Check out our inventory across West Virginia at DutchMillerAuto.com or come in today to the home of friends and family pricing, only at a Dutch Miller Automotive store near you. What is up, college sports fans, Big 12 fans, fellow members of Mountaineer Nation? Welcome in to another edition of Couz's Corner. Like I said, build yourself on up to the bar, and let me serve you up this shot of top-shelf college football content. On tap in today's episode, we are talking about recent reports that claim the Big 12 may not be done expanding, and they may be looking at more schools from the Pac-12. Those schools could be the remaining four: Stanford, Cal, Oregon State, Washington State. I'm going to share an article with you, and then I'm going to give my thoughts on this whole situation. The first thing I'm going to share with you is this article from All Cardinal, a part of Fan Nation, which is part of the SI family. Article is written by Mr. Kevin Borba. I'll leave a link in the description box. The Stanford and Cal reportedly exploring the possibility of joining the Big 12. We are well aware of the Pac-12's embracing collapse, but there are still four programs left looking for a home. Stanford and Cal are in a peculiar position because in one sense, they control what Oregon State and Washington State are able to do, but in the other, they are also left waiting and hoping. The two Bay Area programs have been linked to the ACC for a couple weeks now, and while they were just one vote short and there have been financial plans discussed to add them, they have not yet been invited. The clear-cut vibes coming from the two programs is that they want to be in a Power 5 program, but they need that interest to be reciprocated. On Saturday, we learned via a report from the San Francisco Chronicle that Stanford and Cal have begun looking into the possibility of joining the Big 12. The conference has already taken in four other Pac-12 programs, and obviously that's Colorado, Arizona, Arizona State, and Utah, and has been one of the main aggressors in this latest realignment wave. This report indicated that if Stanford and Cal aren't invited to the ACC by the middle of next week, that their discussions with the Big 12 will get that much more serious. If they do end up heading towards the Big 12 option, Michael Silver of the San Francisco Chronicle also reported that Oregon State and Washington State would also be joining them as well. Something that many didn't think would happen due to the fact that the Big 12 was reportedly no longer interested in pursuing the remaining programs. However, this move makes a ton of sense for all three parties. Stanford and Cal would be much closer to their Big 12 opponents and will get a nice chunk of the media rights deal. The Big 12 can continue to raise their brand, and Oregon State and Washington State would remain at the Power 5 level. Stanford head coach Troy Taylor has already addressed the fact he is confident that Stanford will end up in a Power 5, and it appears now they have another suitor. So I want to share a tweet that came out today from a good friend of the show. And by today, I mean Saturday, August 26th. I'm recording this late at night, so we'll be out on Sunday, August 27th. But a friend of the show, Mr. Jim Williams, put out this tweet that I'm going to show you. It says, multiple reports have the Big 12 Conference showing interest in Stanford, Cal, Oregon State, and Washington State. Reports have Stanford telling the ACC they need an answer this week. So that's very interesting. Now, by that comment by Jim there, it makes me think that maybe could this have been leaked to the media just so that just to put pressure on the ACC to make a decision? It could be, because we know that media leaks tend to happen for a reason. And we did hear Brett Yormark stand up and say in a press conference, or maybe it was a media interview a couple of weeks ago, said, hey, we're done expanding. But he said for now. That word for now means something, because obviously they didn't know this situation was going to arise. Previous reports had stated that Stanford wasn't interested in the Big 12. Do I believe? That's one reason that makes me think, I don't know how much I believe this report. Would Stanford be willing to join the Big 12 conference, a conference that is not known for being a great academic conference? Now, Maybe now that some of their former Pac-12 mates are in there with Arizona, Arizona State, Utah, and Colorado, 4 AAU institutions, maybe they would be more willing to join now that those schools are in. That's yet to be determined, obviously. And maybe if Cal goes with them, they'd be willing to go as well. But can you imagine? I mean, you talk about lifting the academic prestige of the Big 12 conference. Adding Stanford and Cal would do that big time. Washington State and Oregon State wouldn't necessarily lift the prestige of academically, but it would get the Big 12 in to 2 brand new media markets in Oregon and Washington. Now, Washington State doesn't carry the state of Washington as much as Washington Huskies do, but they will give you at least a piece of that Seattle market, which is a big market. I think it's one of the top 10 markets in the country. Obviously, Oregon, with Oregon State, I'm sure you'd get at least a little bit of the Portland market. Now, the one thing that I wouldn't like about this edition for the Big 12, in my opinion, you got these Eastern teams like West Virginia, UCF, and Cincinnati, puts them even further on an island, even more so than they already are. So that concerns me a little bit. How many more times are these schools going to be willing to take more teams from the western part of the United States? Especially when you look at adding teams from the Pacific Northwest, you would have UCF in the far southeastern corner of the United States, and Oregon State and Washington State from the Pacific furthest northwest portion of the United States. Couldn't get much more further away, man. So, that part of it kind of concerns me a little bit. These easternmost teams, if they don't get some help at some point with travel and some more eastern teams in the league, will they grow disgruntled? I don't know. But like I mentioned earlier, it would definitely lift the academic prestige of the conference and would get you some pretty good brands in the league, especially with, look, Stanford's football program has been down the last few years, but man, they are a good brand. Stanford's a good brand. Let's not say they're not. Now there are some concerns by some that they're not a good cultural fit, and by culture, let's face it, we're talking about politically in a lot of ways. Can that be overcome? I don't know. It's yet to be determined. It could get dicey. It could cause some issues. You start bringing in 8 teams now from the Pacific Conference. A lot of these schools are going to be culturally different from what your league already was. Are they willing to bring in these 4 new schools and change the cultural makeup, basically, of this conference? I think this would be a risky move for the Big 12, not only because of the Eastern schools, but because you would be changing the cultural profile of this league. You would be making it more of a West Coast league almost. And the cultures are completely different. You got the Midwest and Kansas, Iowa. You've got the Texas schools. You've got Oklahoma. You've got West Virginia, which is even though they're on the East, they culturally fit well to Big 12. Would it be too risky to bring these Western schools into this league? I think it would be. I personally, my personal opinion, I do not think this would be a good move for the Big 12. Now, there may be some of you out there who disagree with me. Feel free to leave your comments in the comment section for me, whether you agree or disagree, and let me know why. I want to hear your thoughts on this. I personally don't think it's a good move. Yes, it boosts the academic standing. Yes, you're getting good brands with Stanford and with Cal. It's getting you into that San Francisco market. But it worries me. You start throwing all these taking the culture from the Pacific Northwest and San Francisco, putting it in with the Midwest, with Kansas State, Oklahoma. I just don't think it's a good mix, folks. And when you start voting on issues, you could have a lot. Just think about it. You would have 8 members of your conference. 8 of your 20 members would be former Pac-12 teams. And I just think that's too big of a voting block. They would be able to outvote and vote down about any decision you needed to make for the betterment of this conference. And let's face it, the visions for those 8 schools are likely, or at least these last 4, or at least a couple of them with Stanford and Cal, would likely be much different than the 8 legacy teams from the Big 12. There would be a huge difference there. And I just think it's too risky to change the voting block of your conference that drastically. You would completely be changing the makeup of your league, the culture of your league, and how they vote on conference issues going forward. And that would scare me a little bit. Right now, I think you had 12 like-minded institutions in the legacy 8, plus BYU, UCF, Houston, and Cincinnati. I feel like most of the teams you're bringing in with Colorado, Arizona State, Utah, for the most part, will be like-minded institutions. There is some concern with a couple of those, obviously. But then when you start bringing in Pacific Northwest schools and San Francisco schools, that totally changes the game right there. It totally changes the game, and I don't think it's a good idea. I think it's a bad idea. I hope that this is not actually accurate and this is just a media leak to put pressure on the ACC. But man, I want to hear your thoughts on it as well. Please also don't forget to like this video, guys. Don't forget to share it with your friends. And guys, if you want to support me financially here on Couz's Corner, there are several ways you can do that. Number one, you can tip me. If you like the top shelf content I'm serving up for you here and you appreciate this video, hit the heart sign with a dollar sign in the middle of it. That's what I call my tip jar. You can also send me a donation to PayPal, Venmo, or Cash App. The links to all that is in my description box. You can join my channel, become a Couz's Corner member, just like the club level members scrolling along the bottom of your screen now, and the pub level members that I have scrolling now, which is the introductory level members. Be a part of one of these groups by hitting the join button below and taking advantage of the perks I have to offer. Last but not least, if you want to support me financially, check out my merch store. Check out the Fanatics link if you want to do your Fanatic shopping. All of that helps me out. Liking, sharing, comment, subscribing also helps out my channel and helps that YouTube algorithm. With that being said, I really appreciate your support. I appreciate you tuning into this episode. And until the next one, Q Country Roads.